13-9, leaving after 13-9 to go to Michigan, not starting Pat White earlier in the 2005 season. These are three of the biggest criticisms of Rich Rodriguez during his first run of the West Virginia football program. And in this episode of Couz's Corner, which is brought to you by Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law and Appalachia Digital, we're going to talk about why Rich Rodriguez, in my opinion, has atoned for all three of those criticisms and why all Mountaineer fans should forgive him. And we're going to talk about that right after this word from one of those channel sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college football news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers, the Big 12, and conference realignment. On tap today, we're talking West Virginia Mountaineer football, specifically head coach Rich Rodriguez, and why those fans out there who may not have forgiven Coach Rod just yet for the criticisms and the fair criticisms that they have thrown his way all these years, I'm going to explain why I think you should forgive him for those, why he's atoned for them, and he has talked about it in multiple interviews, and we're going to show some clips of some of those interviews, and I'm just going to give you my overall thoughts. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first topic that we're going to talk about is Coach Rod leaving West Virginia for the Michigan job. Now, we all know about the 13-9 fiasco, which we're going to talk about later in the show. But after the 13-9 fiasco, Rich Rod packs his bags, he split, he went to Michigan. Left West Virginia fans scratching their head, left West Virginia fans wondering, why, Coach, why? Why would you do this to us? Why did you not hold a press conference? Well, in multiple interviews over the years, Coach Rodriguez has talked about how it was a mistake. He even talked about it again in a recent interview he did over on the Until Saturday podcast. And right now, I'm going to play a snippet of that podcast for you and show you why Coach Rod should be forgiven for leaving Michigan. I'll go ahead and do a screen share, and I'm going to play this clip for you right now. Again, this is over at the Until Saturday podcast with Chris Vanini and David Ubben from The Athletic. They interviewed Coach Rod just a few days ago. Listen up.
You go to you end up taking the Michigan job the next year, and obviously things didn't go the way you wanted. You said at your press conference coming back that it was kind of a mistake maybe for you to leave the first time around. Do you regret taking the Michigan job?
That's a fair question. I think it was a mistake for me. I don't think, when you say, I guess, the way things worked out in life, and maybe it was meant to be. So, what was it a mistake at the time? Sure, that's easy to say because it didn't work out. Me being with thinking of my ego or something, that had the AD that hired me, Bill Martin, who's a great guy. He'll be the AD my third year. After my third year, we'd have been able to stay there. In the fourth year, when they went to the Sugar Bowl with all the guys that we recruited and coached, every player that made a throw, a run, or a catch were guys we recruited, that we'd have been okay because it was getting better. But it was not getting better fast enough. We didn't win enough, to their standards, which I understand. But had I visited there, I probably wouldn't have taken the job because I had just made an assumption at the time Michigan's facilities were everything that you wanted to have and all this and that. And then I went there and it wasn't what I thought. And so I knew it was going to take some work.
So he admitted that he should not have taken the Michigan job, A, because he shouldn't have left West Virginia, and B, because Michigan wasn't what he thought it was. So I admire Coach, and this is not new news. He has said this in multiple interviews going all the way back several years when he's been on Three Guys Before the Game multiple times. He was on, I don't know, you name it. He's been on multiple shows interviewing, and multiple times he has said this. So again, not new news here. I'm not breaking any news, but he's telling the same story every time. So I think Rich Rodriguez means what he says here. I think he really regrets leaving West Virginia. He's talked about multiple times how he wasn't patient enough at West Virginia. He didn't feel like the administration was giving him what he needed to win, but had he hung around a while, maybe they would have gotten it. They had a great team coming back, yada, yada. He has talked multiple times about how he should have been more patient, and patience is one of his weaknesses. He's older now, and he's learned from his mistakes, right? Just like we all do. All of us make mistakes in life. All of us have regrets in life. People deserve second chances, and especially when you admit to your mistakes, which Coach Rodriguez did in this case. So Coach Rodriguez deserves our forgiveness, in my opinion, because he has proven that leaving West Virginia for Michigan was a mistake for multiple reasons, okay? So let's move on past that, okay? The other thing I want to talk about, Coach Rod and the move to hire him back, a lot of people would say, Well, he didn't, I'd say, well, he recognizes talent. He's able to do a lot with talent. He recognized Pat White as a quarterback. And then people will say, well, but he didn't even start Pat White. He was starting Adam Bednarik, and the only reason Pat got in the game was because Adam got hurt. And Coach Rod, and I was not able to find the clip of this, but again, this is something he has talked about even since he's been back in Morgantown. He's talked about how he did not recognize Pat's ability until that day against Louisville in 2005 when Adam got hurt. Pat White comes in. History's made, right? He leads West Virginia to this 3 overtime comeback win. Never looks back, ends up winning 4 straight bowl games as a Mountaineer, including 2 BCS games, including one at the end of that season against Georgia as a redshirt freshman. He admitted he had not seen that out of Pat White because at that time they were not letting their quarterbacks get hit a lot at practice. And they were not going full speed a lot at practice. They were not tackling as much at practice. So he did not realize Pat White is what they call a gamer. I believe in gamers. I've played high school ball with gamers. Different level, I know, but there are people out there who don't practice well and who may, or just when the bright lights come on, they're at their best. And I think Pat White was one of those guys when he was on that field on a Saturday or on a game day, he was at his best. And he's the type of player that you probably didn't realize how good he was until they were going full speed and tackling. So he was not showing that at practice because they weren't going full speed. And I think we should forgive Coach Rod for that. He's not perfect. I think he's a really good football coach. You could even say a great coach, but he's not perfect. So there's mistake number 2, or criticism, I should say, number 2 of Rich Rodriguez that I think he has now admitted in multiple interviews and taken accountability for. Now we're going to talk about the big one. We're going to talk about 13-9, the night that will live in infamy, December the 1st, 2007. I remember where I was at. I will for the rest of my life. I think most Mountaineer fans do. Coach Rod has said it's the worst night of his professional life. It's something he thinks about almost every day. And I've even heard him say I think one of the reasons he came back to West Virginia is to try to right that wrong for what happened that night. Now, he's talked about how, there were multiple guys on that team that got injured that night, including Pat White, but he also took some accountability. And we're going to play another clip from this same interview on the Until Saturday podcast where he talks about that night. We're going to play that right now.
Coaches often say they remember the losses more than the wins. How often do you think back to that game and anything you might have done differently? It felt like everything had to go wrong for that to happen.
Yeah, I do think about it. Thanks for bringing that up. Shit, I didn't want to think about it. I try to forget about it, but inevitably you can't because people like you bring it up. But no, it's
sorry.
No, it was the worst night of my professional career by far. Nothing becomes close to it. And I know we had a couple guys hurt, and that when Pat got hurt and some other guys got hurt, but I was too conservative in our play call. Our defense was playing great. In our offense, we were stumbling around a little bit, and so I thought we just got to keep it close to vest, not blow it. And it was just way too conservative of an attack, and then we lose the game. And I think we had a great team. I think we could have won it all. But that, if people said that was the reason I left, that's nuts. That was the reason that almost I didn't leave, because I didn't want to leave like that. But it was a bad night, and I try not to think about it, but you got to learn from it, right? I mean, that was, however that was 20 years ago.
All right. So he admitted, yes, Pat White got hurt. Yes, we had some other guys banged up, but he admitted that he was too conservative in his play calling on that night. I think it's something a lot of Mountaineer fans have talked about ad nauseum since that dreadful night in 2007. And he admitted it here. Pitt knew what their game plan was. They had their own game plan coming in to stop it. They did a great job of stopping it. And Rich Rod, in my opinion, did not make enough adjustments offensively. In my opinion, they should have tried to throw the ball more that night. The run game was getting shut down. But the bottom line is, Coach Rod, who was, he was the head coach. The buck stops with him, and he was the offensive play caller. Buck stops with him, and he admitted he was too conservative that night. So I think we should appreciate the fact Coach Rod is open and honest, taking accountability on his shoulders for that night, not trying to pass it off on the players, not trying to make excuses and say, oh, well, it was because of injuries, I mean, he mentioned it, but he didn't make that the number one reason. He said he should have called a more aggressive game. When Jarrett Brown had to come in the game that night, Jarrett Brown was a good quarterback. They should have let him throw the ball across the middle to some of your receivers, or even run your backs across the middle, something. But whatever it is, the point of this video was to say that Coach Rod took accountability for the 13-9 loss, arguably the worst loss in West Virginia football history. He took accountability for it. And I think he also took accountability for not starting Pat White early enough in the 2005 season. And he also took accountability for leaving the program when it was at its peak, when he could have potentially taken him to further heights, potentially even won a national championship, because Pat White and Noel Devine were both coming back that following year, along with some of the other guys. They could have had another run in 2008 had he not left. But he's acknowledged that all three of those were mistakes. And I think we owe him gratitude and forgiveness for making those admissions, for not being too stubborn, for acknowledging, hey, it's on me. I made a mistake. We made a mistake as a staff, and I appreciate that. And I wanted to bring those things to light because I think those were the three biggest criticisms of Coach Rodriguez, in my opinion, after he left. And I think all three of those, I think he's made amends and admitted to all three of those mistakes, put them all on his shoulders. So it's time for those who may not have moved on. I think now it's time to move on. I think most of us have, but if you haven't and you were still holding on to that, please let this be the moment you let go and forgive him, and let's move on and hopefully win some football games. Let me know what you think in the comments section, not only about the 13-9 stuff and all that, but let me know, do you think Rich Rod has earned our forgiveness? Do you think it's time for us to move on, those of us who haven't forgiven him? Do you think he's taken it for his mistakes and his criticisms in his past? Let me know. I want to hear it in the comments. Also, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on this video if you liked it. Don't forget to share it with your family and friends. Don't forget, subscribe to Couz's Corner. I'd like to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, if possible. You can help me do that by subscribing and letting your friends and family, if you got friends and family who like West Virginia Mountaineer football and they enjoy watching YouTube and they may not know about Couz's Corner yet, let them know about me. I also want to remind you that I have VIP channel members here. You can become a VIP channel member by hitting the join button below or hitting the join button over on my channel homepage beside my profile photo. There's also a link in the description box. But one of the perks of being a channel member, a VIP member, is you get random VIP shout-outs. My VIP shout-outs for this episode are David Cummings, Brad Cheney, Jeremy Croy, Vernon Sheldon Witter, and Roy Harrison. 5 of my longtime channel members. I appreciate you all for your support. Again, you can become part of that club. Also want to give another shout-out to my sponsors, Appalachia Digital, who designed my brand new website, which, by the way, you please go check out at wvsportschat.com. Also, check out Appalachia Digital. AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. It lets them know Couz sent you. And if you're looking for someone to design your brand new website, or you're looking for someone to help you get found more on Google, Appalachia Digital is the fine folks you need to see. Check them out today. Again, AppalachiaDigital.com/Couz. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Check out the video right here in the corner of your screen. YouTube says you'll like it. There's also a basketball one from my Hoops from the Hills channel right here. Please subscribe over there as well. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. Stay blessed and Q Country Roads.